Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is 5:30 and the streaming and the recording is on. You may begin your meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I see that we do indeed have quorum, so I call into session this meeting, regular council meeting for February 22nd, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. First up is a land recognition statement, this week read by Councillor Hahn.
We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land agreement by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hahn. Before we move to the agenda, I just have two shout-outs to various organizations. First is to the town staff for yesterday, putting on a great family day of activities at the MCC. Ms. Van Ravensway tells me that all events were in use, such as public skating, ping pong, shuffleboard, plus demonstrations in the gyms for pickleball. Also, for the children's enjoyment was a wandering magician. Community groups on hand were the Pelham Art Club, Font Hill Lions, and the Rotary Club, and Pelham Minor Baseball. A good time had by all, and approximately just under 2,000 residents went out for the day. Second shout out goes to a local business. The local paper, The Voice of Pelham, has reached the finals in 9 separate categories in the annual Better Business competition, which is run by the Ontario Community Newspapers Association, of which the paper is a part of. Congratulations to the local paper and all the best in the judging. Back to you, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink, that the agenda be amended to move item 10.2.5, Union Library Endorsement Staff Report, after item 4.2.1, Pelham Library and Lincoln Library, formation of a union library between Pelham and Lincoln Delegation. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion on this proposed amendment? Not seeing any.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the agenda for the February 22nd, 2022 meeting of regular council be adopted as amended. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. On the agenda as amended, any discussion? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That does bring you to your first item of business, which is the presentation update for COVID from your chief administrative, from the fire chief Limburner.
Okay. So we didn't
Oh,
disclose.
I apologize. You're right, Mr. Mayor. The disclosure of pecuniary interest, please.
There we go. Thank you. After viewing the amended agenda, Does any counselor have a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have so noted. That does bring you to your first presentation from Fire Chief Limburner.
Chief, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and SLT, just a quick update. Just keep in mind that some of the numbers that I'm going to present to you aren't exactly true due to the changes in contact tracing and testing. So, but as of today, Pelham has had a total case count of 1,208 cases. Currently have 82 active cases. Unfortunately, Pelham currently has the highest number of new cases per 100,000 population in the region. So just kind of gives an indication of that where we sit with the rest of our local municipalities. In the region, we had 40 new cases today for a total of 33,600. Total active cases, 1,523. Total resolved, 31,568, and total deaths of 509. We've had one death since last week when I reported this. The region hospital admissions, the acute admissions is still in red. It's over the threshold, but on a good note, the ICU and the ICU on ventilators are both in green. They're well below the thresholds. Ontario cases are 1,090,101. Of those, 1,057,829 are resolved, and we've had 12,288 deaths. Ontario hospital admissions, 1,038. Of those, 319 are in ICU, and of those on ventilators, 178. Total case count across Canada, we're at 3,244,646, with total deaths at 36,070. Niagara Region's positivity rate has gone down a little bit to 15.3. Our reproduction rate's at 0.9. Variants of concern, the Delta represents 1.1% of our cases. Unknown, 18.1, and Omicron is 80.9%. Infection spread, 50.9% is close contact, 40.9% is community spread, 6.7 is unknown, and travel represents 1.5%. Our Niagara Public Health Unit is currently working with 12 active outbreaks. As far as vaccinations go, Niagara, the first dose is at 3.6%. This is all 5 years and older. Second dose, 83.6%. Ontario is 4% first dose, 85% second, and Canada-wide 4.28 first dose and 82.28% second dose. Our provincial indicators are slowly improving. Our new cases daily average and our new case weekly average are both moved into green. Hospital admissions remain in red. Positivity rate and new cases unknown are in red. Today or tonight, later this afternoon, I should say, Dr. Hergy, who is Niagara Public Health, had a meeting with our CEOs, and I'm sure the CEO is going to have an update regarding health restrictions in Niagara. Our MCC was vacated by the region for vaccination clinics, and we've now gone to the GoVax system, which is a bus and an interior vaccination clinic. The interior vaccination clinics are run by the Red Cross, and we have 3 dates. The first one starting on March the 3rd. And as far as PPE supplies, we still remain very healthy in that. So that's the end of my report. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Before I turn it over to council, just like to also note that with the falling case numbers in the Niagara region, it frees up the workers to go back to the urgent care facility in Fort Erie, and it's great to see that community gets their urgent care center back February 23rd. So another great reason to see these numbers coming down. Any council member have any comments or questions on the Chief's report? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from B. Limburner, Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any further discussion?
Any further discussion on the chief's report? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Your next presentation is from our CAO, Mr. David Cribbs.
Mr. Cribbs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. Probably two items of significance to report to you. The first is that after a lot of administrative work, and I'd like to give a shout out. I can't say that it's only people in recreation, culture, and wellness and only in corporate services, but those two departments did take the lead in tallying up the town's expenditures on the vaccination clinics it offered last calendar year. And Niagara Region has agreed to submit a bill on the town's behalf to the province of Ontario for $291,452 is the final total for what this community has paid towards those clinics last calendar year. So that bill has been submitted, and we will find out in due course. I don't know exactly what due course is, but how Her Majesty views that. So that work's been done and completed, and the invoice has gone out. Secondly, Chief Limburner is correct. I did participate in the meeting this evening with Dr. Hergy and other area CAOs. The doctor had a number of things to say to us, but I think the most important at the moment is that in his view, corporate vaccination policies firstly need to be maintained, and secondly are likely to be needed for some number of years to come. And what we're going to have to do is sort of watch to see where the health trends go and figure out what it means to be vaccinated on an ongoing basis. Is that 2 shots? Is that 3 shots? And presumably that number changes over time. Essentially, his advice is that to go from a pandemic to an endemic is not a non-off switch. I think that was his language, and that's sort of a gradual evolution over time, and that throughout that evolution we'll need to maintain our corporate policy as well as sort of every other employer's with respect to the requirement for vaccinations. And from where he's sitting, it'll be well into next year, but possibly years plural after that is also foreseeable that vaccination policy will need to be maintained. And it'll need some sort of continuous evergreening for us to understand what the appropriate standard is. The hope, of course, will be that Ontario continues to carry on with its QR codes so that as people get vaccinated, we can simply see their QR code at some point in the future rather than have to collect personal medical health information ourselves, and not just Pelham, but every other employer, including all of those located in Pelham. So that would be administratively much easier for the rest of us, and is certainly something a number of employers are advocating for. So I think those are the two most significant and salient items this evening. There were other topics of conversation, but they all require some wait and see and a couple other variables to fall into place before I think that it's appropriate to announce them publicly. So that's my report this evening, subject to your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. CAO. Obviously, very nice to see the figure of 290 plus being submitted to the province for the vaccination efforts put forward by the town or the use of our building. I see Councillor Olson has a question. Councillor?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. I was wondering if in your meetings with the other CAOs, if you've come to any kind of a plan for Vision Zero. Does that come up?
Well, at the moment, I'm only to speak on matters pertaining to COVID. So I can't say that isn't an item discussed, although it wasn't discussed this evening.
Counselor?
So today's meeting was only about COVID-related items with Dr. Hurd.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see none. I turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cribbs, Chief Administrative Officer, for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, if there's any other discussion.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the CAO's report? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Olson,
Yes?
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to your delegations. We do have a delegation from the Library Board from Pelham and Lincoln. I'll ask Ms. Leach to bring our delegates in if council can give us a moment.
Of course. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in attendance, we do have Amy Gilmet, Nicole Nolan, Julie Andrews, and Donna Burton, and they're just entering the meeting. We can give them a minute. I
Excellent.
see 3 of them. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do see that we have our presenters. I will remind the presenters that they do have 10 minutes for their presentation, and they're welcome to share their screen for that presentation, so should they wish.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to council tonight, ladies. Pelham, the delegation for the Union Library. I don't know who is making the presentation, but whoever is, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm going to start. Amy or Julie, can you put the slides up? Excellent. I will get started. Thank you. So good evening, Mayor Junkin and members of council and staff. We're pleased to come before you this evening with the results of the formal discussions approved by this council in December 2020 to amalgamate Lincoln and Pelham Public Libraries to form a union library system. I'm Nicole Nolan, Chair of the Pelham Public Library Board, and presenting with me this evening will be Donna Burton, Chair of the Lincoln Public Library Board. The library boards of Lincoln and Pelham have approved the report that is before you this evening and are pleased to outline the high points of the report and the draft agreement before you for consideration. In 2021, Watson and Associates was contracted by the finance departments of Lincoln and Pelham to report on the feasibility of creating a union library and examine the potential benefits to the delivery of programs and services through the redistribution of administrative expenditures, the overall intent of the merging of the operations. Oh, we lost the slides. The library boards created a team that reviewed the Watson report, and then the team directed the staff to draft a report featuring a series of recommended steps. So we're calling our presentation "The Future is Shared." We know from research and experience that a shared services model, like the merged library operation we're recommending, can create efficiencies and reduce redundancy in staffing, reap the benefits of economies of scale in purchasing, and improve diversity and variety in the selection of collections. Most importantly, it will provide maximum access to materials, services, and expertise for the mutual benefit of all residents of Lincoln and Pelham. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass it over to Donna Burton.
Nicole, as mentioned in the report, library senior management in both libraries have already been working to address redundancy in staffing. Both systems formerly staffed a CEO and deputy CEO positions, and this has changed. And you can see the way we've had the library in the past. So may I have the next slide, please? Thank you. This new system will have a 3-person senior management team, the CEO and 2 directors. This change represents a shift of 147,688 out of administrative expenses. May I have slide 4, please? 136,806 of this money has already been used to create new positions needed by the library, namely an administrative assistant, a fund development officer, and a marketing content specialist. 10,882 was used to balance the salary grid. The new administrative assistant is in place to assist the larger system in its financial and HR requirements. May I have the next slide, please? In addition, where we had 2 individuals performing the role of technical services manager, we now have 1 and have created a much needed position for a digital strategies librarian, which you can see down in the lower left there. This individual will create and deliver makerspace programs for the entire system and will act as webmaster. We're excited to be able to address the technology divide in our communities, and the programs for all ages will offer an introduction to 3D printing, robotics, coding, and more low-tech making like sewing, knitting, and vinyl cutting and design. As previously stated, this new staffing arrangement will offer maximum access to expertise through programming. The new Director of Community Outreach will focus on identifying stakeholder needs and developing programs and services to support and engage the community going forward. Partnering with community organizations in the private sector, this individual will also work with the new Fund Development Officer, which you can see just down on the lower left, lower right there, Fund Development Assistant, to begin a capital campaign for facilities improvements throughout the system. The Director of Customer Experience will have the responsibility for all collections, IT, and technical services. Collections will be selected and cataloged for the expanded system by a core team of individuals, removing duplication and creating efficiencies. Lincoln and Pelham residents will benefit from the greater diversity of purchases facilitated by the increased collections budget and from our robust sharing system, the Libraries in Niagara Cooperative. Now, I'd like to pass it back to Nicole, please, and we'll be looking at the next slide, please.
Thank you, Donna. When we work together, we can accomplish more than when working alone. By merging our operations, Lincoln and Pelham Public Libraries are creating an exciting new business model, as well as diversifying the financial support that will pave the way to greater sustainability. We're increasing value to our residents for their tax dollars through strategic foresight and innovation. We are making ourselves more attractive to sponsors and private sector partners. The boards and staff of Lincoln and Pelham Public Libraries are excited for the next step in the creation of a mutually beneficial library system that provides maximum access to collections, programs, and services, and the expertise of our amazing staff team. Could you play the video, please? Thank you. Their quote on there, Google will bring you back, 100,000 answers, a librarian will bring you back the right one. I love that quote. Thank you for your time and for listening, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation, ladies. Before I turn it to council, I'd just like to say that I think the town, both towns, Lincoln and Pelham, can be very proud that we were able to put this union library together. I want to personally thank all the, no doubt, you four ladies and the CAOs and whoever else was involved in making this happen. It was no doubt a little give and take along the way. But from what I can see and from what my CAO tells me, you've laid some excellent groundwork, and the road to success is ahead of you. So I just also like to say that we always had great faith in the public, in the Pelham librarians and the people who worked in Pelham, and as I'm sure Lincoln had the same faith in their people. But it's the old adage, two heads are better than one. And like I say, I'm sure that this is going to be great for the residents of both Lincoln and Pelham. I will cut my comments short there. I see Councillor Olson. Do you have comments or questions for the presenters?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to our visitors tonight and our presenters. I've been a very strong supporter of the library here. I admire the creativity that you see, and the service ethos that we enjoy in the town. And I read the minutes very diligently, and I started reading yours when this became a prospect, and started going to your reports. And it's amazing to me the amount of new programs that you've come up with and how you stood by the community during the pandemic. It's been a godsend to many, many people. So what I'm excited about is I want to see what Synergy can do here, because this looks to me like one of those cases where you take two strong organizations and you come up with something really, really exceptional. So congratulations on all of this. This is kind of the highest form of human cooperation we're witnessing here, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions from any of the councillors? I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say that I am thrilled to support the joining of our two library systems. At the beginning of this term of council, as a new library board member, I did suggest to the board that we investigate sharing a CEO or forming a union library. The response at that time was sharing would be somewhat unworkable and that no one does union libraries anymore. But here we are, about 3 years later, ready to pass a motion to form a union library with the town of Lincoln, to the benefit of both municipalities and, most importantly, all of our library patrons. I would like to thank the staff of both Lincoln and Pelham and the library's CEO and our own acting CEO for all their hard work in making a new union library a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those words, Councillor. Any other comments or questions from any other councillors? Well, I don't see any. Again, ladies, thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you very much in getting the job done. And we're very excited about the possibilities that lay ahead for both towns down the road. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive correspondence from the Pelham Library and Lincoln Library regarding the formation of a union library between Pelham and Lincoln for information, and that Council receive the report on potential operational merge of Lincoln and Pelham Public Libraries by J. Andrews, Lincoln Pelham Library CEO, and A. Gilmet, Pelham Public Library Acting CEO, for information, and that Council approve, support, and endorse the recommendations contained within the said report. To you, Mr. Mayor, for comments.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the Union Library agenda item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Counselor Stewart,
Yes.
Counselor Wink,
Yes.
Counselor Hahn,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Counselor Kaur,
Yes.
Counselor Olson,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to the related staff report on the agenda. And I do have a motion put forth by Counselor Wink, seconded by Counselor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022-0010, Union Library Endorsement for Information, and that Council receive the report by Watson and Associates, which was funded by the Modernization Grant Phase 2 for information, and that Council approve posting this final report on the town's website as per the grant agreement, and that Council accepts and approved the recommendations of the Joint Library Pelham Library Board Committee and endorse the report on the potential operation merger of Lincoln and Pelham Public Libraries effective April 1st, 2022, and that Council directs the town clerk to prepare a bylaw appointing a new library board effective April 1st, 2022. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any other discussion on this, what I will call a historic event? And not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This vote begins with Counselor Wink,
Yes.
Counselor Hahn,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Counselor Kaur,
Yes.
Counselor Olson,
Yes.
Counselor Stewart,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that does carry.
Once again, ladies, thank you very much for the presentation, and we look forward to great results from this union. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I would just ask Ms. Leach to remove our delegation presenters from the meeting. Thank you. That brings us to our next item, which is a motion put forth by Counselor Hahn, seconded by Counselor Stewart. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. 1 RC-03/2022, Regular Council, February 7th, 2022 minutes. To Mr. Mayor to call for any errors or omissions.
Okay, after viewing the minutes, any errors or omissions by any counselor? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Counselor Wink,
Yes.
Counselor Hahn,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Counselor Kaur,
Yes.
Counselor Olson,
Yes.
Counselor Stewart,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to item 7, which is the ability for a counselor to request to lift an item from the agenda, from the consent agenda, should they wish to amend the resolution put forth. If they simply wish to discuss the item or make comment on the item, they do not have to lift that. To you, Mr. Mayor, to see if any counselors wish to lift any items.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Wink.
Item 8.5.3, please.
Thank you. Counselor Kaur.
Yes, 8.5.1 and 8.5.2.
Okay, thank you. And any other items that any counselor would like to lift? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. I do have Counselor Kaur lifting 8.5.1 and 8.5.2, and I do have Counselor Wink lifting 8.5.3. To you, Mr. Mayor, those will be heard separately. I do have a motion put forth by Counselor Hildebrandt, seconded by Counselor Kaur. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the February 22nd, 2022 council agenda be received and the recommendations therein contained be approved, save and accept the items previously mentioned. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion on the remaining consent agenda items.
Thank you. Any discussion on the remaining consent agenda items? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The first item that was lifted is 8.5.1, which is also related to 8.5.2, and that was Counselor Kaur.
Okay, Counselor Kaur, you have the floor.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. Did we find the total cost of both of those Integrity Commission reports?
Mr. CAO?
We did, Madam Clerk has, it's about $14,000, but Madam Clerk has the figure down to the penny, and if I could refer over to her.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There were two separate invoices that were received, and I believe the total was $16,977.50.
Council Court?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. So that means the residents of our community will never know who filed these Integrity Commission reports?
That is correct.
And why?
That is our system. The current system we are working in predated your election and predated my hire. We are here today continuing to work within it. It is imperfect, but it does comply with the statutory requirements of the province of Ontario. I'm not here to, I'm not in a position where I can necessarily sing all of its praises. It has functioned through the last 3 years and change, not always exceptionally well, but it has functioned, and here we are.
Council Court?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to the Director of Public Works. Jason?
Yeah, he's here.
Yep.
Yes, I would like to know how, I know this year is supposed to be the year of the gardens. How much does $16,000 would buy in flowers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. CEO may want to comment.
Yes. Mr. CAO?
Well, to the extent it matters, I'm quoting 14,000, Madam Clerk's quoting 16, and I think the difference between those is the HST, which we get back. To the extent that that matters, I think if Councillor Corr's point is that money can be spent elsewhere, that is correct. Every dollar we spend on A is an opportunity cost that could be spent on B. That is 100% correct.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions by any other counselor on 851, 852? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. If I may right now we are just considering items that are on the consent agenda, not the ones that are to be separately considered at this point in time. So it's open to any of the items on the consent agenda.
Yes. Yeah. Any other comments on any of the other agenda items? Not seeing any.
Thank you. Councillor Corr has addressed item 8.5.1 and 8.5.2. I'm uncertain if he still wants to lift it and consider it separately as just to be considered for information, or if he is satisfied with having made his comments now.
Not really satisfied, but disappointing and disgusted. Thank you.
Okay, I take that as you are willing to leave them on the consent agenda, however.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Corr. Unless there's any other discussion on this?
Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Corr.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. That does bring us to our items to be considered separately. And Councillor Wink did lift item 8.5.3.
Yes.
To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wink, you have the floor on 8.5.3.
Yes. So firstly, I'd like to make a motion in support of the City of St. Catharines regarding the acts of violence, harassment, and intimidation against elected officials and government employees, file number 35.2.2.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So I would take that as an amendment to include the endorsement and to support that resolution from St. Catharines and to circulate to the rest of the Niagara region. Is that correct, Councillor Wink?
Yeah, so if you want me to read at this point in time the exact amendment, that Council for Town of Pelham endorse and support the resolution from the City of St. Catharines, and that the town clerk is hereby directed to circulate a copy of this resolution to the Niagara region and local area clerks.
Thank you. I just need to have a seconder for that.
Is there a seconder? I see Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussions.
Any, Councillor Wink, do you have other comments?
Yeah, prior to us acting upon this amendment, could I make a motion to move into closed session to discuss this to obtain legal advice?
Okay, thank you. So just so I'm clear, Councillor Wink, so this motion, are you tying it into the motion from Councillor Kaur, or are we talking two different motions right now?
Well, this is the motion to support City of St. Catharines.
Yes.
But I would also like to get some legal advice from our solicitors.
I see. Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Wink has moved to move into closed session to receive legal advice. He would need to have a seconder.
Is there a seconder to go into closed session? I see Councillor Kaur.
For further discussion, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, now we're going to discuss the motion to go into closed session. Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion to go into closed session under what auspices is this being done? Could I ask the CAO for this, because they're fairly limited in what we can do in session, and I don't know, I don't really understand it here, so please advise.
Mr. CAO?
Well, I suspect Madam Clerk is going to tell us, we're looking somewhere around section 239 of the Municipal Act, but I'll hand it over to her. I could see her hand up, and she's small on my screen.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
The
Madam
mayor's not
Clerk?
normally facing me, so I put my hand up. Thank you, Mr. CAO. Yes, it would be section 239(2) of the Municipal Act, and Councillor Wink cited subsection F, which is advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Councillor Olson?
Mr. Mayor, these we have to go into closed session reluctantly, I think, and I think I think we need a little more information than that to be doing this, and I'm not sure it covers it, but I will defer my comments further and go along with this, but I wonder.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion on the motion to go into closed session? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote here begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
Oh, sorry, Councillor, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I missed that. My internet connection went out briefly.
This is for considering the motion to go into closed session, citing legal advice.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. If you can give me a few moments just to stop the streaming and the recording, I would appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have confirmation that our streaming and recording is back up, and I do have a motion being put forward by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that council adjourn the in-camera session and that council do now rise with no report. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any comment going back into open session? See none, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us back to discussing the St. Catharines motion. Councillor Wink was making an amendment to support and endorse and to circulate, and he did have a seconder. That was Councillor Stewart. So we're back on that.
Okay, let's go back to Councillor Wink right now then, please.
So nothing further to add to my motion, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions on the St. Catharines, on this motion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So for the amendment, the vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the amendment does carry, and that brings you to the main motion as amended.
Okay, any discussion on the main motion as amended? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will use the same mover and seconder, which is Councillor Wink and Councillor Stewart, and that vote begins with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That does carry. To you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to our next item on the agenda, which is staff reports. And we do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council receive report 2022-0029, establishment of a development application refund and withdrawal policy for information, and that council approve the development application refund and withdrawal policy S300-01. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on 10.2.1? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that council receive report 2022-0050 rescue truck donation for information, and that council approve the donation of the rescue vehicle 02-219 to the community of Little Burnt Bay, Newfoundland. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any further discussion on 10.2.2, the truck donation? And I see Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the chief. I think this is a great thing. I trust you're going to make sure that they have some Pelham hospitality and a full tank of gas when they leave, I suppose.
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our first stop is the mayor's house, and then we'll move on from there.
I'll make sure I have some beverages. Councillor Olson, any other
Yes,
comments?
believe it or not, I've been to Little Burnt Bay. It's on the circle. It's on what they call the circle. You know, do you want me to, I could perform Eyes to Buy. It's Eyes to Buy that builds a boat. Right? It's on the circle next to Morton's Harbor Twillingate. So
Yeah.
it's a great little town. So I can
Excellent.
perform it if you want, Mr. Mayor.
No, that'll be
Thank you.
fine. That'll be fine, Councillor.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the donation? I don't see any. I think I can speak for the rest of the council, Chief, that we think this is a great thing to be doing with the truck, to be donating it to a community, a small community that, as you said in your report, probably doesn't have the ways or means to purchase such a truck like this on their own. So it's nice to see it gets a second life. I guess I would just like to also ask, I see we decommissioned it February 28th, and I believe our new one comes, hopefully we get it, whether it be a year or 16 months. Will we be able to, hopefully, let's put the question, what will you be doing to fill the gap in the next year between taking this one out and getting a new one, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a second pump at Station 2 that we're going to make some adjustments in the CAD on the run cards. And that truck will become the rescue. And then we're going to move a truck from Station 2 to Station 1 to fill that gap. Really it's just going to be a matter of doubling up on a few things, which will cost us a few dollars in the long run, but overall it'll fix our problem about not being able to safety in the truck. So all our equipment will be in service and be fully safety.
Excellent, thank you. And I know you just gave us an update, I believe, last meeting on the new truck. Obviously, are you still putting an RFP out together for that?
Yeah, we have a committee, and we're working with other municipalities. They're looking for similar vehicles. There's not a lot of opportunity unless you're buying exactly the same. Unfortunately, in the fire service, everything's custom. So, but we are working with a few others along with the truck committee. So unfortunately, right now, the truck industry or the fire truck industry is very robust. And right now we're looking at probably at least 12 months to 16 months build once we issue the RFP. So this truck might not be received until mid part of 2023.
Wow, great. Thank you for that, Chief. Any other questions, comments on this item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes?
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022-0020 Temporary Parking Solutions and Enforcement Options for the Meridian Community Center for information, and that Council directs staff to take no further action in relation to temporary parking at the Meridian Community Center pending receipt of the parking study, and that Council directs staff to prepare a bylaw to regulate parking at the Meridian Community Center and other properties owned by the town of Pelham where parking is provided. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or discussion on 10.2.3? Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that comes up frequently is the accessibility parking, the handicap parking. I think there's a very limited number of spaces there. I think it's 2 or 3 spaces for the entire building. And not only that, but people who park in the handicap spots have to cross the street there, and that's the busiest part of the whole property is crossing in the front doors there. I wonder if special consideration couldn't be given to that as a possibility to increase that somehow when we're looking at this. And that would be my first comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, let's give that to the fire chief. Oh, right, Mr. CAO, I see you have your hand. Go ahead, sir.
I'm going to answer this carefully. Look, at the end of the day, it's municipal property, and what council wants done, the law allows us to do. The corporation of the town of Pelham owns that land and can choose how parking will be upon it and how many spaces to each. But as a default, we comply with the appropriate standard and guideline which determine the number of disabled parking spots, accessible parking spots. And what I caution you on is that that guideline, didn't just pop out of thin air. It comes from years of observation at all sorts of facilities across the province. And when you designate a spot for accessible parking, it absolutely helps that community. Those members of the community require that assistance. But understand that it permanently removes the spot for the use by all other humans who are statistically a majority. And so whatever further assistance we offer to those with physical and accessibility challenges, we decrease the parking supply for all others. And that is the trade-off, and that is how that guideline came to be. But at the end of the day, the town owns the land. We can choose what the ratio ought to be, and you are the deciding mind of council. So understand, you can change this. There's no applicable law prohibiting you from making the change. It's just that according to the default, this is the appropriate number. And that's a difficult message to deliver, but you are balancing competing interests. And at some point in time, everyone aggregates out to a statistic.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. CEO. Back to you, Councillor Olson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think to make progress in areas like accessibility and human rights, we have to look at these things as a minimum standard. And I certainly think that at some particular point in time, that the majority people have to safeguard the rights of minorities as well. And if you wanted to get into a rights issue, I mean, it's one of those things where, yeah, there's more able people than there are disabled people or disadvantaged people, but that could change in a flash, like one accident or one illness, and we move into this. So I would prefer to raise the standard of parking beyond the minimum acceptable limit, just simply because of the danger of crossing that street and the number of spots.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Do you want comments on that statement?
No, that's a random observation, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other random observations? Are you done, Councillor Olson?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, to Councillor Stewart then.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. About the number of dedicated parking spaces, how does that work? Is it based on a percentage of parking spaces for a facility, or just purely a number that, the powers that be have given us as a minimum?
Mr. CAO, you, or should I go to the chief?
I actually think probably Mr. Marr or Ms. Wheat. Well, anyone to provide an answer, keeping in mind that a bunch of the process around the construction of this building and its design were uncommon.
Okay, thank you.
So the question would be easier to answer at other facilities, I would submit. But with that commentary, I'll hand it over to possibly Ms. Weens.
Okay, I did see Ms. Weens with her hand up. Ms. Weens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there is a calculation, and it's actually a regulation under the Ontario Accessibilities Act that requires a certain number of accessible parking spaces, and it's a sliding scale, so that the larger the parking lot, the more accessible parking spaces you have. And the number of accessible parking spaces that are provided at the MCC do meet those requirements. We did not shirk our responsibility in providing accessible parking spaces. And we also provide, I think, a couple of family parking spaces as well. Now, those are not regulated and are not a requirement. That's just a nice thing to do. There are certainly regulations with respect to the size of the parking spaces and regulations with respect to the width of the landing zone and as well. So when you laying out the accessible parking spaces, it does have to meet certain size requirements, widths, and having a landing zone. So when the parking lot was designed, it was designed with those accessible parking spots up front. There are ramps in the sidewalk and so forth as well that also meet the accessible requirements. And the site plan was reviewed by our accessibility committee as well as they do review all of our site plans.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Weens. Back to you, Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you very much for that, for the explanation. It's made it perfectly clear. But to continue, do you have a timeline yet as to when we'll get the parking study? And then I have a comment after that.
Ms. Weens?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, the consultants have advised me today that I will have the parking study in hand by Monday next week.
Okay, excellent. Councillor?
Yes, thank you for that. And then my comment is, after looking at the layouts and the possibility of expanding the parking, even if we do add another 200 spaces, we would still have less parking per square meter than the other comparable facilities. That's just my comment.
Thank you, Councillor. And you are indeed correct. Any other comments or questions on the parking? I see the staff report was to not do, recommendation, I guess, was not to do anything until we've seen the parking study, if I'm correct on that, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, you are correct. It does state that to direct staff to do no further action in relation to temporary parking at the MCC pending the receipt of that parking study.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from anyone on council? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote begins with Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that does carry. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2022-0049 Modernization Grant Phase 2 Information Technology for Information Corporate Services, and that Council receive the report prepared by Spatial NDA for information, and that Council approve the posting of this report to the Town of Pelham's website as required by the grant. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any comments, discussion on 10.2.4? I don't see any. We'll go to the Madame Treasurer. I see Councillor Olson. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Marr. Does this replace the present system for residents? I'm going to call it complaints. My word, probably not the right title. Does this replace that?
Director?
Mr. Mayor, yes, so this would be a new platform for the public to submit their service requests.
So we'll shift out of the past one and move into this one, I guess, and this would be where this is where the cannabis complaints would come as well. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the idea would be that all public service requests would come through this platform, looking into different options where how we can tie that in with our work order systems and make it as seamless as possible and as user-friendly as possible as well.
I'm sorry, and does it also tie into the tree policy and the pet mapping of the trees, the GIS and those things?
Yes, through Mr. Mayor, so that would also be included. And the nice thing about this type of platform is that we can tie our work order systems in with our service request, complete the work orders in the field, real-time solutions, and updating the information on real time with our crews in the field as well.
Counselor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It sounds like a great advance to me. I think this is the proper way to go, mechanizing these types of things, and hopefully the service requests will fall off, and we'll be able to manage that a little better. I hope that happens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. I see we do, the Director of Finance has her hand up. Go ahead, Ms. Quinlan Murphy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the goal for this year, as you could see in the report, they have the goals for 2022, 23, and 24. So the public service request definitely is on the 2022 list. The nice thing about this system is that, as the Director of Public Works said, that it will generate a work order for the public works staff, but also this system is also going to be used for doing preventive maintenance. So the scheduling will be put into the system. And then the nice thing is that also ultimately will update the asset management plan. So everything will all be linked together. So we're very excited about this this report, and this was funded by the modernization grant. So this is once again the benefits of the grants that we received that enabled us to do this type of consulting and studying for us. So this is gonna be a game changer actually for some of the web services for the IT department and Public Works.
Thank you for that, Ms. Quinlan Murphy. Back to you, Councilor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Marr. Now, will this also include the subcontractors, such as the tree contractors as well? Will they get a work order out of this system, or will our snowplow support, will they get the work order as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the idea would be that town staff would still direct our subcontractors. So those service requests would come through the town and town employees, and then we would instruct our contractors on the work to be performed.
And are we going to get a different set of reports or anything in our quarterly reports? Will we receive a report of open orders and closed orders and that type of thing as usual?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is that would change that presentation as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other questions, comments from any other member of council? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The vote begins with Councilor Stewart.
Yes.
Councilor Wink.
Yes.
Councilor Hahn.
Yes.
Councilor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councilor Kaur.
Yes.
Councilor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to the presentations and considerations of bylaws. And I do have a motion put forth by Councilor Hahn, seconded by Councilor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1. Bylaw number 4426, 2022, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 4411, 2022, to establish 2022 fees and charges to be collected by the corporation of the Town of Pelham and to add fees and charges to the Planning and Development Services Schedule. Number 2, bylaw 4428, 2022, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the 2021 Canada Games Host Society, Inc. with respect to the 2022 Canada Games and to authorize the town in collaboration with the 2021 Canada Games Host Society to organize and host a community event as part of the 13 for 13 Cultural Festival on Thursday, August 18th, 2022 in Peace Park, 20 Pelham Town Square, Fun Hill. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any discussion on these bylaws presented? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote begins with Councilor Hahn.
Yes.
Sorry, what was that, Councilor Hahn?
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Counselor Kaur.
Yes.
Counselor Olson.
Yes.
Counselor Stewart.
Yes.
Counselor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That carries. To you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to item 14.1, and this is motions, and Counselor Kaur does have a motion on the agenda.
Okay, Counselor Kaur?
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk. I'd like to politely remove my motion.
Thank you. So your request is to withdraw the motion. I would just ask if any members of council have any objections.
Any member of council have an objection to this? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So council has unanimously agreed, and therefore the motion has been withdrawn, and we will move on to our next item on the agenda. Mr. Mayor, that is the confirming bylaw, and I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and does pass, being a bylaw number 4429/2022, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 22nd day of February 2022. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any discussion on this bylaw? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote begins with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That carries. Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for March 7th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any discussion.
Any discussion on this motion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry, and it is 7:05, and you can gavel out your meeting.
I do have one last motion put forward by this council, Madam Clerk, and that is to instruct you on having a great honeymoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We're done. Thank you, John.
You scared me at first.